Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Does anybody know more about litigation than Trump? I'm like a PhD in litigation, okay?
Perhaps that expertise will come in handy after the White House, when Donald Trump is free game. In one high-profile probe, Manhattan District Attorney Cyrus Vance is looking into the inner workings of the Trump Organization. The investigation first focused on hush money payments to two women who alleged before the 2016 election that they had engaged in sexual encounters with Donald Trump. The president has denied the affairs and knowing anything about the payments. But his former lawyer and then fixer, Michael Cohen, said last year, under oath, there was no doubt that Trump knew. In court filings, Vance signaled this probe may also include possible bank, insurance, and tax fraud. For 2 years now, Vance has been trying to get his hands on 8 years of Trump's tax returns. Over the summer, the U.S. Supreme Court blocked Trump's attempt to keep his returns private.
These same people that failed to get me in Washington have sent every piece of information to New York so that they can try to get me there.
How Trump valued his assets will also be getting a closer look post-presidency. In New York State, the Attorney General opened a fraud investigation focused on whether the Trump Organization inflated its assets to get tax benefits and bank loans and played them down when that no longer suited them.
Mr. Trump inflated his total assets when it served his purposes, such as trying to be listed amongst the wealthiest people in Forbes, and deflated his assets to reduce his real estate taxes.
For now, this is still a civil investigation, but it has the potential to turn criminal. Trump will also have to answer to the Attorneys General of Maryland and Washington, D.C., in a lawsuit over the emoluments clause brought back in 2017, which forbids profiting from the presidency. They allege Trump has pocketed big money from foreign governments who have stayed at the Trump Hotel in D.C. Trump has appealed the case to the U.S. Supreme Court, which hasn't decided whether to hear it.
This thing is costing me a fortune being president. Somebody said, oh, he might have rented a room to a man from Saudi Arabia for $500. What about the $5 billion that I'll lose? You know, it's probably going to cost me, including upside, downside, lawyers, because every day they sue me for something.
Citizen Trump will also face lawsuits involving allegations of rape and sexual assault. Summer Zervos, a former Apprentice contestant, is suing Trump for defamation related to her claim that he allegedly assaulted her in 2007. Last year, he lost his attempt to have the case dismissed. His deposition was put on hold until after he leaves office. Trump also lost his bid to dismiss a defamation case brought by E. Jean Carroll, who alleges Trump raped her in the 1990s. Trump has denied harming either woman, saying this about E. Jean Carroll, quote, "She's not my type." Randy Kay, CNN, Palm Beach, Florida.
Well, a lot of legal fights for President Trump ahead. The man pursuing the civil lawsuit in a D.C. courtroom joins us now, D.C. Attorney General Karl Racine. Mr. Attorney General, thanks for joining us. As we mentioned, Stephanie Winston Walkoff was deposed today. I know you aren't able to share details. Is this an ongoing civil case? Can you share if she was cooperative or not?
Ms. Winston Walkoff has been fully cooperative since day one of meeting her, and her deposition today, I think, was truthful, honest, and fulsome. Though I cannot talk about the details of the deposition, I can tell you that it strengthens our case, and our case is a just case because it demonstrates that the Trumps took advantage of the Presidential Inaugural Committee and funneled money, $1 million, essentially, into their own pockets and purses through the Trump Hotel.
And can you just walk us through how you believe that the inaugural committee may have overpaid the Trump family business, and what you found after years of collecting evidence? Because I understand part of it is they were charging or allegedly charging exorbitant rates for hotel rooms during the inauguration. But don't all hotels in D.C. jack up their prices during an inauguration or during big events?
They do. The issue is the proper conduct of the inaugural committee, which was a not-for-profit organization that received certain tax benefits, which they didn't pay taxes and expenses were able to be written off. Well, in exchange for those benefits, they're supposed to guard against waste, guard against self-dealing that would lead to monies going into related businesses like the Trump Hotel. So Anderson, let me give you one example that I think is one of the most glaring examples. We have found evidence that the Trump Hotel charged the inaugural committee $175,000 for event space that they charged another not-for-profit organization $5,000 for.
Wow.
That is wasteful, it's exorbitant, and to be very honest, it's taking advantage of the public to line their own pockets and purses. That's why we're suing.
And Ivanka Trump, I know, sat for a deposition last week in which afterwards she released a statement saying in part, quote, "This inquiry is another politically motivated demonstration of vindictiveness and waste of taxpayer dollars." She also posted an email that she claims shows she had specifically instructed the Trump Hotel to charge a, quote, fair market rate. You've said that her statement was highly misleading. Can you explain why?
Sure. Her email was, if I'm not mistaken, it was December 14. I know that because that's my birthday. And sure enough, in that email, she talked about market rate. She didn't talk about what occurred after December 14, including fire alarms, red flags from Ms. Winston saying, wait a second, we can't charge the inaugural committee these exorbitant rates. Instead, there are no emails where Ms. Trump put a halt to those kinds of charges, and therefore we know that she was in the loop but didn't stop it. Let me go further, because you mentioned in the opening segment that I guess the president mentioned that he's a PhD in litigation. I can tell you that my colleagues and I on the Democratic AG front have sued the president a lot, over 138 times. 80% of those cases we have won in front of courts that have been judged by democratically appointed judges and Republican appointed judges. They have found that the Trumps have no legal claims, that their actions are contrary to law. And I'm confident at the end of the day, when this inauguration suit, it will be another loss for the Trumps, just as their last minute Hail Mary, with all due respect to the Virgin Mary, attempt to overturn this election is. The complaint filed by the Texas Attorney General, and I believe the United States Supreme Court, will be rejected by fair-minded judges appointed by Republican presidents and Democratic presidents. The heroes in our democracy have been the federal courts.
What sort of timeline do you anticipate for the rest of this lawsuit? It may be too hard to tell, but and also what would a fair resolution look like if you won to you?
a fair resolution in this lawsuit is the return of all the monies that were wasted and went into the pockets and purses of the Trump family through the Trump Hotel. And we estimate that that's well over $1 million. In terms of timeline, Anderson, unfortunately, sometimes a lawsuit takes time. And so we'll likely be well into the year 2021 before resolution. And as you mentioned at the outset, a civil case is not pardonable. We're going to litigate this to the end, and I'm confident that justice will prevail.
It is Friday, the 11th of December of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all night hawks in the diner of life indeed. Well, you know where the French 77s are. They're in the virtual world. So if you happen to be mixing one in the real world, do take care. Not in the mixing, but in the imbibing. It is a very potent spirit indeed. The most balanced cocktail in the history of cocktails. But very potent as well. So, how are ya? Made it to Friday, which means we're going to be deluged with all sorts of news for the weekend, aren't we? Isn't that how it's been for the last 4 years? God, I'm waiting for some boredom. I really am. Except I fear that even if we are able to take the Senate, and there's no clear path to that because they're throwing up every obstacle in the world, including a civil war. But if we are able to control the Senate by this Georgia vote somehow, you know that Mitch McConnell has some poison pills already in place. So I guess it won't be so boring after all, but at least we won't be on the brink of whatever we're on the brink of this weekend. Who remembers what we were on the brink of last weekend? Okay, well, 3,000 plus people keep dying every day, but that's not news. That's just normal now, isn't it? Alrighty, boy. We had Republicans ready to throw away all our civil rights when 3,000 people died on one day on 9/11. But, now, it's not politically expedient, is it? Oh, no. I don't mean that they're unwilling to throw away civil rights and all Constitution, because they've already done that. But I'm talking about, doing any actual legislating to help. Oh, my God, I cannot wait for January 20th. And even then, it's going to take some time. Also, back to this idea of a vaccine. You got to keep wearing a mask. All right? Things don't happen at the snap of a finger. And anyway, people like Rudy Giuliani and those types are going to get the vaccine. I know they keep saying that frontline workers and, all these different types of people will have priority, but that will not happen. Are you freaking kidding me? While Trump is still in office? Jeez. Yeah, I wish that some of my friends who have been suffering from this disease and a few who have died had access to the drugs and medicine that Rudy had access to. And he's out there bragging about it now. They are ghouls. And I'm not really sure if they are from this world. We've been hearing a lot of weird stories dropped about, yeah, there are really space aliens here. And you know what? They're taking over. There's only one party that was willing to sell out America to the Russians. One party. The other party always turns it over to the law enforcement so that they can take care of it because someone was attacking us. Their side sold out America to the Russians. Are they really of this world? Could they be the malevolent space aliens that we've been hearing about? I know that some space aliens may not be malevolent, but I think these are. Look what they've done. All right. Well, if they're not space aliens, I think what I'm trying to say, it doesn't really matter if they're space aliens. Because whatever they are, they need to be taken care of. And I'm tired of being polite. How the hell am I supposed to be civil to 106 Vichy collaborating insurrectionists calling for sedition and the destruction of democracy? I'm supposed to reach across the aisle and find some happy medium? No. I think that maybe we need to put our foot down and actually maybe put some bite into the law. They are well adept at doing it. Why don't we try it a little bit now? You disseminate propaganda, especially the right-wing kind, because I know what is propaganda. You perpetuate neo-Nazi right-wing propaganda that advocates the destruction of our democracy. That's against the law. And we'll have to figure out civil and criminal penalties forthwith. So there, we could start there. Will we call it the fairness doctrine? Yeah, maybe we will. Fairness and democracy doctrine. How about that? Oh, they're gonna, and when I say they, I mean with a capital T, and we know who all they are with the capital T. We know who they are, don't we? They're gonna be howling to high heaven. They have no leg to stand on. They're willing to destroy democracy. Well, now you get to feel the brunt of what it is to be an insurrectionist calling for sedition. Oh, we just have to let them do it. It's their free speech rights. No, it's yelling fire in a crowded theater. It's endangering people's lives, and people's lives have been endangered as we speak. And Gestapo tactics are being perpetuated upon healthcare workers, data scientists, emergency medicine physicians. And we'll be speaking about an emergency medicine physician and what happened to him today in the curated part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Speaking of which, why don't we give you a rundown about what we have in store for you here today? Well, at the top, that was a breakdown of the slew of civil and criminal legal probes Trump will face when he leaves office. And I think he's facing them right now, at least on the state level. Then on the rest of the menu, the fourth-ranking member among the Georgia House Republicans was indicted on a charge of reckless conduct for ignoring a fatal hit-and-run. The Supreme Court will let 3 Muslim men sue several FBI agents for placing them on the no-fly list when those Muslim men refused to be informants. Well, the FBI showed them, didn't they? And, as I prefaced earlier, a Yuma hospital fired a well-known emergency medicine physician for reporting on the severity of COVID-19 in Arizona. You just cannot do that. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Finland said that radiation levels had risen following an incident. Yes, an incident at a nuclear reactor in the western part of the country. And the shooting death of a women's rights journalist brings the total number of journalists and media workers killed this year in Afghanistan to 10. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and Kelly, of course, does so much more, and thank you, Kelly, for doing so much more. to the leftish of the chat room link near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon site, our Patreon page, and that's where you can become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio because, hey, there's no free lunch. I wish these ISP types would, just give us this service, but no, they provide a service and one is expected to pay for it. It only seems right. I don't know. That's the world we live in. So we like to pay our bills, and we do. And for some reason, as we've been doing this for almost 10 years now, we've been able to fly under the radar and get away with a lot of stuff that some people might call resistance to these, this right-wing takeover of our representative democracy. We will not allow it to happen, at least without a murmur. Okay? Anyway, all kidding aside. Your generosity over all these many years, and I got to say another big thank you to those of you who have increased your recurring contribution by a considerable amount, especially this time of year, but also in this time of peril. Thank you so much. It has gone a long way, and we're going to be seeing the fruits of that real soon here, since Windows 7 is no longer going to be supported. And the machine that we have, the PC that runs Windows 7 right now, yeah, it's been a workhorse, but we not only have to, we must upgrade. And because of that generosity extended to us, we have been able to do so. And we're getting everything in place. And by the end of the year, which is coming up, we will have that changeover. So hopefully there's not much downtime, if any. But anyway, for those of you out there, if you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink and send those funds our way once a month, we are able to stretch those dollars. And as I intimated, we have great experience at doing so, almost 10 years of doing so. And then we pay our bills, as I said, fly under the radar, as I said, and we fulfill our civic duty, as the founders originally intended. Oh, so many years ago. Thank you for that generosity and for considering the generosity in the future. I know it's tough. Just do it when you can. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, Tom made that so simple, and he takes care of our Twitter account. Thank you, Tom. And you can find us at Netroots Radio. How simple. And you can also find me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, as well as the Justice Department on Sunday nights, about 10 minutes before showtime. And I get that linked up on social media, such as Twitter and now Facebook again, until Zuckerberg tells me I can't, and other social media platforms that are just out there, and they're all there. They are all there. And you can also follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. Pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found, mixed in with all the rest of us. And there's got to be billions now, huh? You would think. Well, that's why I say, we're not going to let this fascist takeover happen without at least a murmur. Because when you got billions of podcasts, it's about all you can muster in the midst of that din. But here we are, and we're doing our small part because, I don't know, it's almost like a duty, a calling. I don't know, an obsession. I don't know, the show must go on. Speaking of the show must go on, let's dive into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. And it comes out of the Associated Press by Jeff Amy. A high-ranking Georgia state lawmaker has been indicted on misdemeanor charges, alleging he wrongly ignored a fatal 2019 hit-and-run crash that his friend called him about as the victim lay dying in a ditch. Misdemeanor charge. State Representative Trey Kelly, who as Majority Whip is the fourth-ranking member among House Republicans, was indicted early today, on a charge of reckless conduct, according to Polk County District Attorney Jack Browning. Ralph Ryan Dover III, That's how they do it in Georgia. The man accused of calling Kelly instead of 911 after fatally hitting bicyclist Eric Kreese was indicted on charges of felony hit and run and reckless conduct. A lawyer for Kelly said the lawmaker had been fully cooperative with the investigation and looks forward to presenting the facts in court. So fully cooperative, he never called the cops until after the fact. I feel confident that Trey, who was not even in the car at the time of the collision and was called to the scene after the fact, did nothing wrong. Lester Tate wrote in an email how they got the accent in the email. Well, only I know. Once all the facts are known, I believe that he will be vindicated. Tate said Kelly will turn himself in on Friday today. I don't know why I said that today he was indicted. It was yesterday, Thursday. What day is this? It's Blue Moon Spirits Friday, of course. And the bail has already been agreed on. It's unclear if Dover the Third has a lawyer. Well, with a third in your name, I'm sure you do, on retainer. Kelly, a Cedar Town resident and lawyer, represents all of Polk and parts of Floyd and Haralson counties in northwest Georgia. Officials have said Dover hit Kreese while driving his SUV on North Main Street in Cedartown on the night of September 11th, 2019. Instead of calling 911, Dover drove elsewhere and called Kelly, who in turn called Cedartown Police Chief Jamie Newsom at home. An officer was sent to the area unaware that someone may have been injured and eventually found Kreese lying in a ditch gravely wounded. Kreese died from his injuries soon afterward. Georgia's reckless conduct law says people cannot harm or endanger others either by acting or failing to act. In other words, there's no Good Samaritan law. You hit somebody, you have no legal obligation to help them. Browning said in a statement that law enforcement and emergency medical personnel were not contacted until about 45 minutes after Kreese was hit. The Polk County coroner ruled the death a homicide by vehicle. No one was arrested, but attention to the case increased this year, including after a series of stories by WXIA-TV. An incident report details windshield and other significant damage to Dover's SUV. Kelly told police that night he wasn't sure whether Dover hit a person or a deer. However, Kelly told police he saw a bicycle at the side of the road, according to an incident report. At that time, I still did not know another human being was involved, Kelly said in a statement to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution earlier this year. I fully cooperated with law enforcement except for trying to obstruct it in the very beginning. I made that last part, you know. Browning said grand jurors heard 2 days of evidence, including videos, witness recordings, and testimony from law enforcement officers and a state medical examiner. Browning said he instructed grand jurors to determine for themselves and to recommend the charges they believed were appropriate and justified under the law, in part because the Georgia State Patrol never filed any charges. Aaron Kreese, the victim's brother, also called for charges against Newsom. Kelly easily defeated a Republican opponent in a primary and won the general election in November against a Democrat. Republicans unanimously reelected him as whip last month. Browning said the case now moves to Polk County Superior Court. Andrew Chung of Reuters brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. The U.S. Supreme Court yesterday, Thursday, not today, Thursday, today's Friday, let 3 American Muslim men sue several FBI agents who they accused of placing them on the government's no-fly list for refusing to become informants, rejecting a challenge to the lawsuit by Donald Trump's administration. In an 8-0 decision, the justices upheld a lower court ruling allowing the men, all U.S. citizens or permanent residents who were born abroad, to sue for money damages under a 1993 federal law called the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. The men said they refused to spy on U.S. Muslim communities, as allegedly requested by the FBI agents, because doing so would have violated their religious beliefs. The 1993 law was aimed at ensuring that the government had compelling reasons to substantially burden any person's exercise of religion. The case hinged on a part of the law that provided for appropriate relief against a government without defining what type of relief may be appropriate. The question here is whether appropriate relief includes claims for money damages against government officials in their individual capacities. What we hold that it does, wrote conservative Justice Clarence Thomas, who authored the ruling. Well. The case, which began in 2013, involves New York City residents Mohammed Tanvir and Jamil Al-Gaba and Connecticut resident Naveed Shinwari. They said they were put on the no-fly list despite no evidence showing they threatened airline or passenger safety. The men's separate encounters with the FBI span from 2007 to 2012. Their inclusion on the no-fly list meant they could not visit family in Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Yemen, sometimes for years. They said the actions of the FBI agents harmed their reputations and cost them employment. A trial judge had thrown out the claims, but the Manhattan-based Second U.S. Circuit in 2018 revived the case, ruling that the law allows individual officers to be sued for damages. In its appeal, the Justice Department said that the Second Circuit ruling, if allowed to stand, would clear the way for a slew of lawsuits against countless federal employees that could deter them from performing their duties. Oh, we have to follow the law? Oh, no. These employees, it said, included national security officials, criminal investigators, and correctional officers. You know, the types that you don't ever expect to follow the law to get the job done. I guess you'll never guess who recused themselves. Well, it was Justice Amy Coney Barrett, a Trump appointee who was not a member of the court when the case was argued in October and rightfully did not take part in the decision. Final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is a maddening report by Jamie Landers, writing for the Arizona Republic. Dr. Cleveland Gilman, a well-known emergency medicine physician, has been asked not to return to his work at Yuma Regional Medical Center because of his social media posts about the severity of the COVID-19 pandemic in Arizona. What I don't understand about this is I have been advocating for Arizona. I've been calling for a mask mandate, the closure of schools, and indoor dining, Gilman told the Arizona Republic. I did all of this because we are seeing an unprecedented number of cases. This is my third surge. I know how it ends. The hospital said in a statement late Thursday night that there has been a misunderstanding, and Gilman is scheduled to work this weekend. News to me, Gilman stated. Gilman, who in June moved his fiancée and 2 kids from New York to work in Yuma, near the U.S.-Mexico border, and serve the small community during the pandemic, has not been to work since November 23rd. It started on the 22nd, when Gilman tweeted, "Just got to work and was notified there are no more ICU beds in the state of Arizona." What happened to 175 beds? We likely don't have nursing to staff them, he added. The Arizona Department of Health Services at the time reported that 90% of ICU beds were in use. His tweet received more than 81,000 likes and 30,000 retweets. Gilman said he finished his shift that day without a problem. The next morning, on the 23rd, Gilman had just arrived at the hospital when he received a call from the healthcare staffing company he works for, Envision Healthcare. Envision told him the hospital did not want him to come back to work. They told me it was because of the tweets, and I couldn't believe it because that was accurate information I posted to inform the citizens of Arizona. It is a grave injustice, and it's just not happening to me. Doctors everywhere are afraid to speak up. Gilman was scheduled the following 3 days, but the hospital did not permit him to come in to work. All I know is this hospital is trying to crush my voice. They want to silence me, and they want to financially hurt me. This is all so wrong. In a time where Gilman said hundreds of thousands of his colleagues are forced to leave the front lines due to burnout and rising infection rates among healthcare workers, it is a slap in the face to sit on the sidelines for no reason. But regardless of whether or not he holds a position at the hospital, Gilman said he isn't going to be quiet on social media anytime soon. Now, Gilman served as a hospital corpsman in the U.S. Marines during the Iraq War, well before he became the chief resident of emergency medicine at the New York Presbyterian Hospital during the beginning of the pandemic. A moment in history, he said, was worse than war by a long shot. The death toll during the entire Iraq War was equivalent to what we see now every single day. You could leave a war zone if you couldn't handle it. COVID is everywhere. Starting on March 20th, Gilman began documenting what was happening on the front lines in his online journal. His first post, "Tough night last night," intubated a young woman with a history of smoking who decompensated very fast. There are so many COVID cases in New York City. His post about COVID-19 drew worldwide attention, thanks in part to their insight into a hotspot in the early days of the pandemic. In the spring and summer, he talked with Men's Health Insider, but his prominence skyrocketed with the tweets about the ICU beds in Yuma. Well, his staffing agency says that he is a prominent emergency medicine physician, and any hospital would be glad to have them on their staff, so he doesn't really have to worry about not finding work. But Dr. Gilman says, I came here to Yuma, and I'm not going out without a fight. Good for him. He is a hero. Why do we keep punishing these heroes? Well, that brings us to our break, and how about we do that? And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, A new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, The Life Ahead. That's the title of the new film helmed by the legendary Sophia Loren and directed by her son, Eduardo Ponte, about two outsiders coming together. In the wrong hands, trite sentimentality would await, but Loren and Ponte managed to take this theme and make a film that is intelligent, touching, and timely. Loren's Madame Rosa, a Holocaust survivor turned sex worker turned foster mother, is a complex character who maintains a sense of dignity, even when it comes to dealing with unruly charges and the pitfalls of old age. Supporting her is the young Ibrahima Guy, playing Momo, a Senegalese refugee who first meets Rosa after he attempts to steal from her. A local doctor who has been caring for Momo bribes Rosa to add him to her brood. Rosa, along with the kids and a trans woman who lives in the apartment below, form a family of sorts, reinforcing one of the movie's themes. That family can be more about the people with whom you choose to associate than about biological relations. As the audience learns more about Momo and Rosa, one thing becomes clear. Trauma has deep and lasting impacts on people and who they can trust. The fact that these two can trust anyone, much less each other, is a triumph, even though Ponte is wise enough not to wrap his story with a fairy tale ending. The performances of 86-year-old Loren and 14-year-old Guy and the rapport they generate make this one worth a watch. It's rare to see a woman Loren's age in a leading role, but this one makes clear that there was far more than beauty that made her the first woman to win the Best Actress Oscar in a non-English role. A nomination for The Life Ahead wouldn't be a stretch. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
One in 6 Americans get sick from eating contaminated food each year. Contamination caused by salmonella is especially common. It's sometimes found in poultry, eggs, ground beef, pork, and even peanut butter. To reduce your risk from this and other foodborne germs, remember to clean, separate, cook, and chill. Clean your hands with soap and water. Separate raw meat, poultry, and seafood from other foods. Wash counters, cutting boards, and utensils before and after using them. Cook all food thoroughly and use a food thermometer to make sure food is cooked. Promptly chill meat, poultry, eggs, and other perishables. Finally, don't prepare food for others if you're sick, and be extra careful when you prepare food for children, pregnant women, the elderly, or people in poor health. To learn more about making food safer to eat, visit www.cdc.gov/vital signs.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
For an expectant mother, taking care of her developing baby means taking good care of herself. One way she can do this is by ensuring she gets vaccinated. If a woman is or might be pregnant during flu season, it's especially important to get her annual flu shot, preferably before the end of October. In addition, women should be vaccinated against whooping cough during the 3rd trimester of each pregnancy. Failure to get vaccinated places both mother and baby at increased risk for serious complications of these infections, including hospitalization and even death. If you're pregnant or planning to get pregnant, ask your healthcare provider when you should get your vaccines. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Should people behind bars be a priority to receive the COVID-19 vaccine? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. The American Medical Association says yes, people in jail should be put near the front of the line, not the back, to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. That's because people in jail face many of the same health risks as people in long-term care facilities, who are considered a priority group. Prisoners live in crowded conditions, share bathrooms and eating facilities, and social distancing generally is impossible, which makes their odds of contracting the virus high. Inmates also have high rates of asthma, diabetes, and heart disease, which makes them particularly vulnerable. And an outbreak inside jeopardizes the larger community. Guards and other jail personnel daily come and go, and inmates make bail or complete their sentences and return home. Not surprisingly, studies prove that an outbreak inside leads to serious outbreaks outside. There will, of course, be pushback to the AMA position. Colorado Governor Jared Polis, for example, said, "There's no way the vaccine goes to prisoners before it goes to people who haven't committed any crime, but from a public health point of view, if nothing else, that's a destructive position. And do remember, people inside have almost no control over whether they are exposed to COVID-19, and none have been sentenced to suffer a horrible disease or death." The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU, because freedom can't protect itself.
The U.S. Department of Agriculture. What is it, and why does it matter? Created in 1862 by Abraham Lincoln to be what he called the People's Department, today this little-known agency has enormous tools and resources to restore fairness and opportunity across America's countryside. It has major anti-monopoly authority, controls huge rural development and housing programs, runs food stamps, school lunch, and other nutrition programs, has responsibility for pesticide regulations, directs the Forest Service and numerous other environmental programs, has sweeping civil and labor rights responsibilities, wields a $151 billion annual budget, has 100,000 employees, and an office in every county in America. And, most powerfully, the Secretary has broad authority to be a national advocate for the people against the corporate plutocracy now controlling policy. Ag Secretary is a big office, but tools only work if you use them. President-elect Biden rightly promised to restore trust that our national government will serve the public interest rather than continuing policies that abet oligarchic power and increase inequality. Here is a clear test of that promise. Instead of recycling another old-line agribusiness acolyte into USDA, Biden must be pushed to make a progressive choice for Secretary of Agriculture, someone unencumbered by financial or political ties to the status quo, willing to practice what Representative John Lewis called getting into good trouble, necessary trouble. This is Jim Hightower saying, at minimum, the next Secretary of Agriculture should pledge to rally family farmers, workers, consumers, rural communities, and urban neighborhoods in a common effort to break the corporate stranglehold and turn USDA into the People's Department again.
If you'd like more of Jim Hightower's real populism, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter gives you the real lowdown on which corporations, by name, are doing what to the middle class, our environment, and our democracy. Each month, the Hightower Lowdown brings you facts you didn't know, along with actions you can take to fight back. It also comes with a sense of humor. Hightower believes we can fight the gods and still have fun. Plus, get this, it's cheap. Only $15 brings you 12 issues a year. For real populism, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2012. That was the day that Michigan Governor Rick Snyder signed right-to-work legislation into law. The birthplace of the United Auto Workers Union had just become the 24th state to pass legislation that guaranteed the open shop and the prohibition of mandatory dues collection. More than 10,000 trade unionists gathered in Lansing that day to express their outrage. The only source of income that unions have is their dues base. Without it, unions can't adequately represent their members. Work of unions isn't just about effectively negotiating a contract. It also includes fighting contract violations, excessive discipline and wrongful discharges, and enforcing safety and good working conditions on the job. All of this suffers under right to work. But this is nothing new. Right to work laws have their roots in fighting the Wagner Act and the CIO organizing drives throughout the South in the 1940s. The Texas billionaire and lobbyist Vance Muse fought hard against child labor laws, the 8-hour day, and even the right for striking workers to picket. Pro-segregationist Democrats, cotton brokers, Fred Koch, the DuPont brothers, Gerald Sloan of General Motors, and others supported him in his efforts. His organization, the Christian American Association, was closely aligned with the Ku Klux Klan. Muse argued that segregation could only be maintained by enforcing the open shop. Otherwise, whites would be forced to interact with blacks. He said, quote, "From now on, white women and white men will be forced into organizations with black African apes whom they will have to call brothers or lose their jobs." The wealth class has spent millions of dollars over 60 years to defeat working people and reverse hard-fought gains. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. You know, we always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 36 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting only a high of around 40. And it looks like we'll be cloudy with rain developing in a few hours. And winds will be light and variable, expecting a little less than 1/4 of an inch today, with a little bit more than 1/4 of an inch overnight, which will come from a steady light rain and showers continuing overnight with lows around 35 and winds light and variable. Tomorrow we'll have only a spotty light rain throughout the day, not very measurable according to the forecast, and high in the mid 40s. And then for the next looks like 7 days or more, we're going to have rain and showers with about expected 1/4 inch all the way up to 3/4 of an inch coming up every day after tomorrow. Yes, indeed. Confirmed coronavirus cases in Jackson County here in the southern part of Oregon continue to stand at 4,017 with 37 deceased. These numbers were lowered on Monday after the weekend. Usually they go up quite a bit because the weekend totals have not been counted. They drew back on confirmed cases of the virus and drew back on the deceased. And I have still not been able to get an adequate explanation from anybody, though I suspect it may be because of the lockdown we had here in the state, and those numbers just haven't been delivered. I do not know. Pollen right outside the window here at the mothership in Rogue River proper is rated at none. The air quality index for the region is moderate at 52 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is low at 1. Barometric pressure is currently holding steady at 30.2 inches. Visibility is down to 4 miles, and relative humidity is at 99%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 51 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 51 with rain. Rome is 53 and sunny. Kyiv is 27 and cloudy. Kabul is 39 with haze. I wonder if there's smoke mixed in with that haze. Hong Kong is 65 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 51 and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 65 and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 47 degrees and partly cloudy. And New York is 50 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Those anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Finland's Nuclear Safety Authority said that radiation levels had risen following an incident at the Olkiluoto 2 nuclear unit in western Finland, but there was no radioactivity leakage outside, and the situation was under control. Well, let's hope that's true, because it is Finland after all. There is no indications of a fuel leak from the incident, and there are no longer any exceptional radiation levels inside the plant, the authority said in a statement. It said it had been informed of elevated radiation levels at the reactor around 1 p.m. local time. This is a significant and an exceptional incident, and we consider it important to spread correct information about it, Finland's Minister of Social Affairs and Health told reporters. The elevated readings stemmed from a room regularly showing higher values during normal operations, and no power company employees had been exposed to radiation or were injured, it added. Oh, maybe just contract employees then. The nuclear power plant operator TVO said the incident was an unparalleled event in the facility's history. TVO is a consortium of power and industrial companies. TVO was investigating the cause of the radiation spike, which may have originated from a contaminated filter reaching the coolant system.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Even more anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Islamic State claimed responsibility for the shooting death of a female TV presenter and who was also a women's rights activist in Afghanistan yesterday, Thursday, an attack that underscored an increasing trend of violence against journalists in the country. Malali Mawand, a presenter at Anikas Radio and TV in the eastern province of Nangarhar, was killed along with her driver in the attack in the regional capital of Jalalabad, taking the total number of journalists and media workers killed this year in Afghanistan to 10. The area has been a hotbed of militant activity, most notably involving Islamic State, which issued its claim of responsibility via its Telegram communications channel, calling her a pro-regime journalist. She was 25 and was not the first in her family to be targeted. 5 years ago, her mother, also an activist, was killed by unknown gunmen. The TV station has been targeted before, with its owner kidnapped for ransom in 2018. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week, but you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we will meet up on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver.